thank you everybody for joining us in our third Plugged-In series for the Adelaide project. I am, for those of you that do not know me, I am Clarissa Llaneza, lighting and interior designer, and I like to joke all the time, certified overshare. We've been doing this now, this is our third one for 3 months. We are very, very excited to have Ross Guntert with us today. A friend and colleague. We met at Parsons while he was doing his undergrad in architecture. My husband and myself were doing our master's in architectural lighting, and then he went on to Berkeley to do his master's in architecture, and he is currently with Gensler in Portland, but I'm not going to do too much of an intro, as I would love for him to also tell us a little bit about who he is, what he does, where he is right now. Yeah, so thank you guys again. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, the Plugged-In series is going to be happening, I'm just letting more people in as well, every month. And what we do is that we try to focus on people that can inspire us, people that we admire, people that we can learn from, especially in these times where we're all, basically kind of stuck in our homes. And I don't know about you, but I sometimes feel a little bit cloudy and I can't find inspiration. So this is exactly for that, to try to, bring us all together in these strange times and take advantage of, a little bit of the situation and learn from each other and inspire each other and educate ourselves. So again, thank you so much for your time. I know sometimes all these Zoom chats can become a little bit too much. So I'm very happy that you guys took the time in this hopefully hot summer day for wherever you guys are, at least for us here in Toronto, and I know for Ross as well, to take the time to be in front of the screen. Yeah, yes. So how are you, Ross?
I'm doing well, and thanks for having me. This is super exciting.
I'm happy that you're here. So can you tell us a little bit about you? I know my introduction was very brief, but
yeah, sure. And maybe I should probably share my screen here, huh?
Yeah.
Let me just presentation. There we go. All right. Yeah. So my name is Ross Guntert. I am a senior designer and the commercial office buildings practice area leader for Gensler here in Portland, Oregon. I'm originally from Stockton, California, in the central part of the state, but I went, as Clarissa mentioned, to Parsons School of Design for undergrad in New York, and really kind of graduated at the peak of the Great Recession, so that was a lot of fun. But luckily I was able to get a job with the art and architecture practice in Brooklyn, New York, a firm called Snarchitecture, who really it was a fantastic experience for me, an opportunity to kind of focus on a wide scale of projects, primarily interiors, some furniture work, some set design, and some larger design competitions. But I then decided to go back to California and get my master's at UC Berkeley, and really that's where my time with Gensler started. I joined Gensler in 2011 as an intern, and it's kind of a crazy story. I mean, I was sitting at work one day, and Hao Ko, who's the managing director in San Francisco, kind of came up to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about designing 1 million square feet of office space?" And I'm just like, I've never, thinking in my head, right? Like, I've never designed a architecture or office building in my life, but I was like, all right, let's do this. And so it was for 1 million square feet of a new headquarters for NVIDIA. And I worked a majority of the summer kind of developing this concept with Hao and the team, and they presented it to the CEO, and they came back and they're like, "Ross, I don't know, it didn't go really well. The client basically, said, why are you presenting these absurd ideas? This is crazy." And I just, like, my heart sunk. And I looked up, and the whole team was just like laughing hysterically. I'm like, "What?" They're like, "Actually, they picked it." And so, like, that was kind of the start of, so the image on the left is the NVIDIA headquarters, and that was really my first office building experience. And so Since then, I'm going on almost 10 years at Gensler now. I've had the opportunity to design a number of building typologies, but again, my focus is really on commercial office buildings. So the project in the middle is it's Workday. It's a 410,000 square foot office building in Pleasanton, California. Workday is a cloud-based HR software company, and they were looking for a new home for their developers. So that opened up last year, and it's such a bummer to see it kind of empty at the moment, but looking forward to the future with that project. And then the project next to that is actually just down the road from Workday in Dublin, California. It's the Zeiss Innovation Center. So Zeiss is a German optics company, and they were looking for a new research and development building in Dublin. And so that is finishing construction, barring any other kind of COVID related issues in January. So super excited and really proud of these three projects. And 2 years ago, I actually made the decision to move up to Portland with John Wicks, our managing director, to kind of kick off the office up here. And it's really been an amazing experience. We have a killer group of designers, and just really proud to be able to kind of start something.
Yes, and Portland.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of a lot. It's kind of crazy because when we our last episode was with, or conversation was with Alex Papas and Francesca Bassanini, who you remember from Parsons, and it was the day that everything with Blackout Tuesday happened, and they're literally in New York, and we were kind of nervous that morning, being like, should we go and continue? But we decided to do so because of the actual conversation was very relevant. And it's insane that now we're having you in the middle of all these things happening in Portland. So tell me, can you just briefly tell us a bit about that, how you guys holding up? And I know you're downtown in Portland as well, right?
Yeah, so I mean we're holding up. I mean, we're watching kind of from a distance here. Downtown is roughly 3 miles away from where we live, but what really kind of started out as a movement for kind of systemic racism, racial justice, and police accountability. It's as a result of kind of federal agents being kind of thrown into the mix. It's morphed into a more kind of complex mobilization. And so, right, as a result, the goals of the protesters have shifted a bit, where previously it was about defunding the police and addressing some of these income inequalities and social injustices. Now it's all about kind of pushing those federal agents out of the city. And so it was the protests were actually starting to die down, and as a result of kind of the presence here in Portland, they've kind of amped up again. And I was reading last night that it sounds like some more federal agents are coming, and so we'll see. It's really hard to watch, especially seeing people who have their own constitutional right to kind of speak their mind get pretty badly pushed down. So yeah. We'll see. I mean, like with all of this, we're kind of taking it one day at a time.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy you guys are okay and that your kids are not really seeing that. So
yeah.
And then now with COVID, which
COVID,
or part of the topic of our conversation, but I know you're working from home. Not only COVID is not really allowing you to probably get into the office, but the protests as well. So what is your current work situation looking like?
So I'm joining you guys from my bedroom. The transition hasn't been that difficult for us. I have 2 young kids, that are under 4 years old, and so that kind of poses its challenges every now and then. But prior to all of this, my wife is a stay-at-home mom, and so their kind of day-to-day routine hasn't changed much, other than the fact that they don't get to see their friends as often. I think the biggest change is the fact that I'm home more. I'm not traveling, I'm not going to the office, so that has been actually really fantastic in that I've gotten to see over the last couple months my kids really develop and grow, and this is really something I probably would have missed if that wasn't the case. And so, I know everybody's situation is different, and right now it's working for us, and like everything else, we're kind of taking it one step at a time.
Yeah. And talking about that with COVID and you being so involved with office design, which is actually being a hot topic right now of, COVID, basically, how are we going to get people up into these offices? When are people going to be able to go back to work? How is work going to look like, or an office space going to look like? I know you guys have been doing some very, very interesting research with Gensler, and I was reading a lot about it this weekend. So can you walk us through this research and how you think the new office or work environment is going to be looking like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to walk you guys through this, and really, what this is kind of our most recent research from the Gensler Research Institute. This really is the first results from our U.S. work from home survey. So this survey is the latest iteration of our research, which is focused on work and the workplace that's been conducted really over the last 15 years or so, which has essentially established the kind of foundational vocabulary and data for the workplace experience and how the physical workplace environment connects directly to employee performance and experience. So really this research effort focuses on the experience of working from home during COVID and how that experience is informing employees' thoughts on the future of the workplace.
That's really interesting.
So the results in our study really are kind of based on a 2,300 plus person, anonymous panel-based online survey, and respondents are, broadly representative of the kind of U.S. population of office workers, and respondents were required to have worked in the office environment for, most of the time prior to COVID-19, and to be currently employed by a company of 100 plus people. So respondents here kind of represent a wide range of roles, industries, and generations, kind of allowing for more deep understanding and analysis across these lenses. So one thing I'd like to point out kind of within the generation aspect is you'll see that like millennials and Gen Z were kind of grouped together. And the reason for that really has to do with the Gen Z is a relatively small portion of our workforce at the moment. And so we basically took those two groups and brought them together.
Quickly, for people like me, like quickly say the difference between Gen Z, millennial, Gen X, and baby boomers, kind of like just the age, for just quickly.
Yeah, sure. So, gosh, the exact date ranges, I'm not sure. So I know, like, as far as like millennials are concerned, I'm kind of on the older end. So, really kind of starting from 84 to kind of, let's see, I would guess around where my sister is, around like early 90s, and then kind of that space in between, Gen X, right? Baby boomers really being kind of the group kind of coming out of post World War II and kind of the older generation within the workforce.
There's a very big difference between the baby boomer and the Gen X and Gen Z and millennials in terms of these research.
Right, yeah, and really, the kind of the largest chunk really kind of falls within that Gen X, but what we're, especially since you start to consider that millennial and Gen Zs are kind of grouped together here within this sample of research, Gen X makes up a majority of that kind of research. However, there's some really interesting things that I'll get into later, specifically how it pertains to kind of the younger generation and how they're dealing with this kind of work from home.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Gensler's been researching the workplace since 2005, so 15 years. And it's important to understand that the work from home data and kind of the broader context of how our work is changing and how the workplace is really evolving. And one key area or opportunity we're seeing is addressing the issues of returning to the workplace after COVID-19. Is also an opportunity to address some of the challenges that our research had already kind of brought up, or that had existed within kind of the physical workplace prior to the pandemic. So concerns around noise, density, et cetera. So really, one key finding that we addressed in our survey and really was at the top of the mind of our clients was based on the experience of working from home during COVID-19 and how people feel about working from home after the pandemic really has ended. And so we asked our respondents whether they would like to continue working from home regularly after COVID-19. And if they said yes, we'd ask them how many days. So the results were really fascinating, and from like an office designer perspective, kind of a sigh of relief. But really only 12%, or roughly 1 in 8, office workers wanted to work from home full time. And so it's important to note that the experience of working from home was new to most of the U.S. workforce before COVID-19, and that 1 in 10 had actually worked from home regularly, and less than a third had even had the choice to work from home at all. So for most workers, this was a new experience that really shed a lot of light on the ability to work from home, but also formed new opinions on how that practice could potentially continue. The longer we work from home and apart from our colleagues, the more being together really matters. And sorry, I lost. Here we go. Sorry. Oh my goodness. Where am I? Here we go. There's my slide. I went a little too far. The longer we work from home, really, and apart from colleagues, as I was saying, right, the more being together really matters. So employees who want to return to the office yearn for interaction with each other, and that human experience. So we want scheduled meetings with colleagues and clients. We want to socialize with each other. We want those impromptu connections, those kind of natural opportunities to learn and coach each other. So the pandemic has kind of illuminated for many workers what the possibility is to do remotely, and conversely, what activities are best done face-to-face. So you can see here, right, it's the top 4. It's really about people. And so, in response to that, we asked employees what they missed most about the office. And again, it's people, people, people. That was our kind of overwhelming response. And when we asked what activities are harder versus easier to do while working from home, collaborating and kind of staying up to date with what others are doing were really kind of the hardest to do remotely. So these people-focused activities and work modes are really clearly emerging as important aspects of a great workplace moving forward. As I mentioned before, we analyzed the data to really understand how the experience of working from home is affecting other workers and different types, and found some really interesting data points about generational differences. Again, we didn't see a generational difference in the desire to return to the office, but there were some real key differences that emerge in terms of how the work from home experience is currently going. So broadly, right, younger generations are feeling way less productive and less satisfied working from home. And the data shown here kind of elaborates on this a little more deeply. The darkest color shows millennials and Generation Z respondents, with Gen X in the middle and the baby boomers in the lightest green to the right of each chart. So you'll see that the younger workers are less likely to feel accomplished, like they've accomplished the work that they need to at the end of a typical workday, and overall feel they're getting less work done while at home. So younger workers are less aware of how their work connects to the larger organizational mission, and are more likely to feel stressed out while working from home. And I mean, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, especially kind of thinking about my own situation where, a lot of people within that kind of generational range, right, or maybe have kids, or maybe
Have
um,
roommates.
yeah, right, have roommates. Maybe there's, both partners are working, and finding, and again, maybe they don't have a house, but maybe they're living in an apartment. So there's kind of these social and spatial constraints that really kind of limit their ability to truly perform. And this was really interesting for us, especially thinking that kind of, this generation really had a leg up on technology, and how kind of these virtual collaboration, opportunities worked. They really ended up being the generation that kind of struggled, or have been struggling the most. And so, you know, we also see key differences in the ability to avoid distractions and maintain that work-life balance that we were talking about while working from home, with the youngest respondents, reporting the greatest challenges here. Our data also really uncovered an additional bucket of crucial insights as we look to the future of the workplace post-COVID. And really that is, what do people expect in terms of the physical workplace once they return? So broadly, and this is really to no surprise, right? They expect change. And so that means, more space, less sharing, greater overall support for mobile and virtual working, including the ability to work from home sometimes. So flexibility, right, is key here. And so here we asked employees to rank a series of actions their office could take in terms of what would make them feel most comfortable returning to work. And so you'll see at the top of the list are key policy items, including sick policies and the ability to work from home, both strategies to keep sick people, out of the office, and be more strict about it. After that, right, it's cleaning policies, issues around kind of social distancing and reducing, workplace or workspace sharing show up as real key issues, along with some other screening and testing related items. We also asked respondents to rate how positively or negatively they would feel about several scenarios focused on kind of the post-COVID workplace. And, what we found was that respondents felt most positively about, increased social distancing, 1, 2, the ability to work from home, and then 3, the reduction in those shared workplaces or workspaces. So I think, the big revelation here, right, is there's no one size fits all approach or solution for any of this. I mean, how the workplace adapts should be really specific and unique to each client and their business and their culture. And so, what we have done is developed this work from home experience survey that we have used for our own offices as well as other clients. And it's really just, a subset of the research questions to understand how employees are working. What's easier or harder to do at home versus the office? What do they value both at home, and at the office? As well as, ask about their concerns and expectations for returning to work. This really enables employers to kind of develop a strategy of communications and plans to best meet their needs as they kind of rethink their workplace short term, and as they begin to imagine their workplace in the long term. So, that's kind of a whirlwind through that research, but we're really excited to kind of dive into this data deeper, and we've really just kind of begun this process, and we'll continue to share out some of those findings. I think one of the big topics, as I mentioned before, that I'm really excited about kind of digging even further into is what really is holding back some of these younger generations from being more productive. And so in our next round of kind of questions and surveys, we'll be kind of addressing topics just like that.
And I'm very happy that you guys have been doing this research. You started the research before COVID, right? Or
That's correct. And so that data really kind of serves as the foundation and an opportunity to compare, pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? So
which is amazing because you have both data collected and you're going to continue to do so, which,
right.
You listen to podcasts, read articles, and everybody's talking about the new office. How is it going to look? And people are just literally throwing out guesses, and, everybody knows more than the rest. And the fact that this is so data driven, I find it very interesting. And I know that because of that, you want to do design based on data. And so anything that you would talk about now would be very hypothetical. But based on what you've seen, is there any way that you can talk a little bit about, some findings or potential solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. I go on next slide here. I mean, I think, for us, we really believe strongly every organization should have the tools and information needed to plan for success during these unprecedented and uncertain times. That's why we're developing these new tools, new ways of thinking, and partnerships with our clients that are really stronger than ever. We're ready to help these organizations kind of conquer those immediate actions, but also adapt to the ongoing pandemic and really begin to reimagine the future. So,
like the new handshake?
yeah, just a little elbow bump. Yeah, so what we're doing here, right? There's kind of this 3-phase approach, right? These 3 incremental shifts, and each phase of our approach, we have developed, various activities, data-driven tools, and organizational research that go well beyond kind of the numbers to arrive at a strategy for each client's unique situation. Our teams work to create those real in-depth deliverables that will help support our clients back to work strategy and offer a greater transparency throughout that process. So as you can see here in the diagram, some of those kind of baseline activities really include, so like in the first phase here, the immediate actions, which really kind of focuses on health, right? We'll work with the clients to identify the screening and monitoring protocols necessary for their organization, right? The cleaning and hygiene measures, appropriate physical distancing, and vertical transportation, right? The next phase, right, is kind of that leading the change, the ongoing kind of pandemic phase. And during this phase, we focus on creating a safe work environment and making employees feel valued, and that their health really matters and is paramount to the company. So during this phase of this strategy, right, we work to explore new space typologies, access to vertical transportation, space standards, guidelines, and then building and infrastructural systems. And then finally, right, it's kind of the reimagined future. And this is like the big kind of meaty part, right, where, if you think about it, right, this virus and our collective response is going to indelibly change, our world and our behaviors, right? And while the virus itself is super scary, the opportunity to kind of rethink and reinvent how we work, both kind of together and apart, offers this amazing catalyst for change. And so the post-COVID workplace will demand a couple things, right? It's going to be that enhanced workplace experience, right? I kept talking about how people want to come together, and so that experience is going to be key to kind of forming and building and maintaining a culture within that office, right? Touchless experiences, right? A commitment to health and wellness, and the employment of smart building applications. And so, we have kind of a number of strategies that we're working through, with owners and developers, as well as users and workplace kind of on the front end. And a lot of these kind of grow and shift as we kind of transfer into some of these future phases that I was just talking about. And, you know, again, there is no one size fits all for any of these, but, you know, there's some real clear kind of ideas or thoughts around, you know, how we deal with building access and lobbies, right? Circulation and fire stairs. How are we getting people up and down and in and out of the building safely? Sorry, my slide's lagging here a little bit, right? Now it's like the public spaces, you know, restrooms, right? You know, ventilation for the building, wayfinding and signage at kind of almost the informational piece itself could, you know, take on a whole life of its own, right? And it's super, super important. And then, you know, ultimately like cleaning protocols and how you implement those new protocols. A little lag here. You know, employee experiences, queuing, right? All of these things that we're all talking about, but really, I think where the innovation comes in is how you begin to take these and tweak them and adjust them in order to adapt to this new way of working that we're all going to see in the coming, you know, weeks, months, years, right? Bear with me here. So really, you know, what the return to, you know, the workplace will really require kind of a choreographed course of immediate actions, right, and long-term efforts, and that's what you're starting to see in this kind of diagram here. And we believe that, you know, a great workplace experience will continue to be as important as ever, right? And that requires kind of aligning space, culture, interaction, and behavior. And so I'm, you know, despite everything going on right now, hugely optimistic about what the future of office buildings will be, and real excited to be a part of kind of analyzing that and really kind of designing through this problem with our clients and consultants and team members in the near future. So,
and when we were chatting this week, I forget, Friday or Thursday, we talked about a few ideas about, like you mentioned, the Disney World of the world environment, which is about the experience, and the Tesla, which is about the touch point, and maybe pods throughout the city, which I thought was so interesting when you mentioned that. So can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's, as I mentioned before, right, workplace experience is going to be paramount, right? Yeah. And you know, I was kind of equating it to kind of this Disneyland experience, right, where people are coming to a destination and have this feeling or impact by the experience that that place is delivering, right? It's an opportunity, and that's an experience that you bring with you as you go back home, right, with your family. And while I think it's kind of sorry?
Recharge, re-inspire.
Yeah, exactly. And it becomes a kind of a touch point. And so, you know, how that translates to kind of the office, you know, environment, right? It's like, that's where kind of the Tesla, you know, piece came in, where I was thinking, like, you know, if, say, companies decided to reduce their portfolio and their office footprint, you know, what is that touch point with the culture of the office or the firm? And I was, again, thinking of this kind of Tesla experience where it almost becomes kind of this opportunity to connect with the brand. Maybe it's a smaller space. Maybe it's something that happens at the ground level, right? But it's an opportunity for people like to come and experience the culture of that place, right? And so for me, that could be an amazing opportunity to also be this client interface, right? This opportunity for your employees to reconnect, you know, before heading back home. And maybe there's a series of touch points that are dispersed around the city. You know, maybe that kind of client-focused space happens downtown, but you know, these smaller satellite offices begin to kind of make their way closer to where a lot of the workforce is living, or has a stronger tie to the community. And so those type of of options or opportunities present a real amazing kind of look into what that future work could be. Like the need for work office space isn't going to go away. It's just going to look a little differently, and it's how we craft that experience, which is going to be key to the success of those spaces.
Yeah, and I was watching a documentary, I forget, something recently about how basically pandemics affect the design community so much because we have to readapt. And the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, you've already been collecting this data prior to COVID, during COVID, and hopefully post-COVID, if we ever get out of this, which we will. And like Le Corbusier with all the whiteness to feel clean, and all the elevation to basically have the dirt below, and all this information that from like the masters of architecture, if we want to call them that, changed a lot of their ways because of diseases or pandemics or etc. So I'm very excited to see where, sadly enough, I can say excited to see where this leads us, this ongoing research, and where we're going to end up with what offices and cities will look like.
Absolutely.
I think not just office environments, everything is probably going to change, even like your front entrance and your door, people's behavior. So I'm very happy that you have, walked us through this research. I find it honestly fascinating. And it was like, why are we not talking to Ross about this? When it's just like, ding, like a light bulb turned on. So I'm very happy that you walked us through this.
No, and thank you for the opportunity to join the call. I too am really excited about the future, as I mentioned. And I think with this data, and luckily we have a lot of it, right? Kind of starting from 15 years ago, we can kind of take what we've learned and make it better. And that's what we're all on this call, I'm sure, striving for, right? How do we create spaces that people want to be in and feel comfortable in? And especially in a time of a pandemic where of that emotional security and is of the utmost importance. Like, how do we make our people feel comfortable, and that their health and wellness is kind of at the forefront of all of our minds? And so that for me is, again, kind of like, what an amazing opportunity. And it's like, again, hopefully we get out of this soon, but we need to be smart about how we return to work, and we'll kind of see how that goes as time goes on.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to see that the research showed how important the people actually are. So, yeah.
Those are the people inhabiting this space. And if we're not designing for them, then who are we designing for?
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? You want to add anything else, Ross, or you want to take some questions? If anybody has.
Happy to take some questions.
If anybody has any questions, you can either raise your hands or type it in the chat.
Yeah, and I know asking questions isn't always the most comfortable thing. You're more than welcome to reach out to me directly too if anything comes up.
Yes. So I don't know if I did something to our chat. Oh, here you go. Oh my God, all of a sudden, like, okay, great. So hi Matt, how are you? So one from Matthew Henning, looking on the Gensler site, can you share where to get these summaries? And also Claudia raised her hand. What's your name? Ross, sorry, can you, yeah, there you go.
There we go. Yeah, so it's on the first page. And you can kind of go into a variety of topics that we're, covering here, from, a variety of building typologies, from office space to the shopping destination to hotels, and all of that kind of lives on the site and is for the public to kind of use and read and learn from. And so, yeah, if you just go directly to our Gensler page, you can be directed right to it.
Amazing, thank you. And then Megan Malish asked if we could share the presentation with attendees, or should we share the PDF? What do you feel comfortable with?
if I have I have a presentation that can be shared. So I can send that to you, and we
Great.
can kind of go from there.
Great.
But
And then,
it's pretty much all the same content.
yeah, and then Claudia raised her hand. Claudia Keppel was actually our first chat. She is absolutely amazing, amazing architect and lighting designer. So I'm going to unmute her for her to ask her question. Hi, Claudia.
Hey there.
How are
Thanks a
you?
lot. Good, good. Thanks. It was really fantastic. Nice to meet you, Ross.
Nice to meet you.
Really, really excited that you're willing to share this research. Is really interesting. I have two questions, and I'd be really excited to hear from you how you go about this. I mean, there seem to be several approaches now. Like one of them is how the WELL standard in wellness is really kind of making its way into the conversation as a more holistic approach with not just office environments, but in general, which is exciting. But then you have also this other conversation that is in general in architecture, and especially with our current crisis we are facing, we are going beyond experience. That in recent years, the development in design has been very focused on experience being one of the main goals because it is all encompassing and takes our senses into account. And so pretty much this as being on the one end of the equation, the going beyond experience, and maybe architecture finding its way into other meaningful conversations besides immediate physical manifestation. And then parallelly, a new acknowledgement that through neuroscience and new ways of understanding the brain and activities that you have pretty much the opposite, that it starts to become an opportunity to really understand of how impactful space is as a conscious and cognitive environment. Do you take any of those into your thinking? And if so, yeah, can you share your thoughts about this?
Yeah. So and maybe I guess the question is really about kind of experience and how that's changing. Is that just so I'm clear? I want to make sure I answer your question directly, because there was a question around wellness and how that's making its way into the experience equation, and then the other really about how we're currently designing for experience, but maybe how that shifts later on. Is that your thought, or is that your question?
If you understand it that way, that's great. Well,
yeah, I mean, from a wellness perspective.
Sorry,
right?
Ross, can we see your face too? Because
yeah, here, let me stop sharing.
Oh. Yeah.
There we go.
hi.
Hi, Claudia.
So from a wellness perspective, I think there are a lot of opportunities, right, in order to kind of heighten that experience within the office in order to make those spaces better for people, right? I mean, that's kind of one aspect of experience. The other really being kind of the cultural piece of it, right, where it's that connection with the people, the brand, the environment, and how that not only kind of influences the people on the inside of the building, but from kind of an inclusion standpoint, how that kind of allows people in and makes those spaces more accessible. And so my thought with the future is that this is going to be kind of a mix of a lot of those things, right? And ultimately need to be kind of a reflection of that office's culture and beliefs. And as you saw with our data and our approach to kind of how we address specific clients, like there is no tailored solution. However, there needs to be a conscious thought around the wellness of the people, how they're experiencing those spaces, how they're coming together in order to create a really kind of vibrant environment for people to be productive, and again, kind of want to go back and see and connect with those people, if that makes sense.
Does make sense, yeah. Thanks. I mean, I'd like to follow up with another quick question. Is if you
Sure.
take the data into account, and there already is the understanding that Generation X and Generation C need something different than millennials. How do you approach something that in the future eventually will mature into a different age group with different needs? I mean, how is that influencing your approach?
So this part of the research for me is super fascinating, and I think what it's pointing out is that with those in-office interactions, there are those opportunities for the younger staff to have moments to connect with some of the older staff. And in this new environment where we are working virtually, it really falls on kind of upper management and the kind of people with more experience within the office to really reach out. I mean, I know we're kind of in an age of kind of over, sharing and over kind of seeing each other, within this kind of virtual realm. But with these younger generations, it's super important to create those opportunities to connect. And again, that kind of falls on some of the, the more senior members within the office to kind of take that on. And that's really kind of a cultural shift that needs to happen, as a result of this new kind of work style. And people are learning, right, as we go. I mean, being within that kind of millennial group, I was actually really shocked to see that, but people work differently. And I think that what this highlights is the importance of knowing how people work and creating an opportunity for those people to succeed. And that needs to happen through conversations and listening.
I also think that Claudia, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she was also asking for future generations, how do we kind of prepare for that change, seeing that this younger generation is the research is pointing out to be very different than the older generation, which, to be honest, my personal opinion also has to do with the older generation being a little bit more established in the sense that they're more disciplined, and they probably have a little bit of a bigger space and more of a quiet house. So a lot of those things affect, shows the difference as well. But I assume that with the data that you're collecting and you will continue to collect, you probably start seeing also the difference with the future generations that are coming up. And are you taking into account that possibility of that change that might happen from what I was to what it is to what it could be? Are you guys taking that into consideration? Would that help a little bit, Claudia, with your?
Yeah, and that really kind of dives into what this next round of kind of surveys is getting into. Because again, this was something that we didn't really foresee. I mean, it makes sense, but it wasn't something that was necessarily on our radar. So this is, in this next round of studies and surveys, that's what we're really kind of digging into, is how do we make that better as we kind of push forward? And, what are kind of the pain points as a result of, working from home? What sort of shifts can be made spatially, from an employee incentive standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, can be made in order to kind of help bridge that gap and create those opportunities for people to really kind of thrive within different work environments.
Does that answer your question, Claudia?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry?
Do you have another question, or because I would have another?
Oh, you can ask another question.
All right.
Marie, but we can take yours since you're here, and since we're seeing you, and then we can switch to Anna.
So just I'm just curious, if you base so much of the design on the backdrop of the data, is that something that you roll into the service, or is that a pre-service that is a special agreement up front before you get into the exercise of designing with a client, or is it just something that you're so interested within Gensler and you just make that research generally available and it just becomes something that you offer as a knowledge base?
Yeah, totally. You know, this kind of the larger research that we ran through just now on the call is really, that's something that we conduct on our end. And, you know, where our kind of that extra service comes in to do some of these work from home surveys for companies specifically, that becomes an additional service. And we use the information that we gather from that specific work from home survey to and use and compare that to the other data that we've gathered kind of as a larger kind of more holistic research activity that Gensler has taken on. And so again, that's if the, you know, if the more what this offers is the opportunity for not only us but our clients to really kind of listen and understand what their employees are looking for to make them comfortable and feel safe. And it's just more specific to those people. Again, kind of using the backdrop of the other research to compare against. And so that allows us to make more informed decisions within the design process to give them something that they really need or want. Now, our design process does not rely on, you know, an employee or a company kind of taking on that survey on, you know, on their own. We can use the research that we've developed as a company to kind of push those ideas forward, but it's still a conversation, right? It's like, you know, what are your goals for this? And, you know, like any design process, it's all about kind of listening to what the client wants and kind of formulating ideas based on those conversations and then delivering something that is hopefully something that they're really proud of and excited about. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you, Claudia. Can you, did we lose you? Okay, Anna Marie Hubbard. I don't know why I couldn't hear Claudia anymore, but thank you, Claudia, for that question. As always, you have great questions. Anna Marie Hubbard is asking, what sort of typologies are you projecting? There has been lots of discussion about individual workspaces going back to enclosed offices, but do you think we'll actually do heads down work in the future office space, or will it be a connect and collaborate space only?
Yeah, you know, again, I think it kind of goes back to the specificity around the client and their culture and their office. Some office buildings require, you know, some of the essential services require people to be in the office. And so some of those spaces may kind of, you know, evolve, but be similar to what we see. Others, for example, might not, right? And we may see, again, these opportunities for the office to be more of a cultural touch point rather than kind of a heads down space to work, right? It's an opportunity to connect with clients, with team members. Maybe that's where all staff meetings are held, right? You know, that's where people come to, again, connect with the brand. And maybe some of those, you know, activities are distributed kind of across a larger network of spaces. Again, I think that's going to rely heavily on the types of changes companies are willing to make, the type of work they're doing, and, you know, how comfortable their employees feel with these types of changes.
Do you guys have any other questions? I know that you and I quickly kind of like, when we were talking on the weekend before our kids joined the conversation, it was very interesting, exactly what you're bringing up about maybe it's going to look like pods across the city where people, again, touch base. I mean, again, it is very early. It is very data driven what we're talking about. And it's also, who knows what's going to happen. And it depends on the company culture, it depends on the people, it depends on the city, it depends on real estate, on costs, on budgets, on so many things. But it's amazing that, you know, the information is getting collected and that you guys are considering that. I think that, you know, partly of what Claudia was asking as well is, you know, holistically, also what are you considering for people to feel safe? Like the feel of it, you know, the emotions of actually going into an office. A lot of people have loved ones and they're very scared of, you know, that are high risk. And I think this fear is going to stay even a little bit long after COVID disappears. So, you know, a lot of this, you know, whether it's an enclosed space, whether it's an open space, whether there are pods across the city, whether, you know, all these things are so up in the air right now. And but it's great to see that there's 1,000 opportunities, and us as designers, it is our job to learn, to talk, to communicate, to research, and to just, you know, try to work on making, not just creating a safer environment, but also making people feel safer.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and maybe if I could comment on that. I mean, I think, you know, what's really important to kind of think about, right? It's like there's kind of a COVID period, a pandemic period, right? Which is kind of what we're in right now. You have kind of the post-pandemic, right? And where people are really starting to question, like, all right, you know, maybe we didn't have to go to work here. Maybe some people will go to work here, but then in the future, it's like, all right, then you have this like post-pandemic where, let's say there's a vaccine, or let's say there's some sort of immunity that's been built up or something, right? There's a part of that fear is gone, and that's going to take some time, right? Is there an opportunity with the advent of this new virtual way of working to find a way to kind of disrupt the existing typology by introducing new typologies into the community to kind of better service the culture of your company or your firm or your office, right? So, and that's where I think like this kind of hub and spoke model, right, where you have these satellites kind of come into place, is when it's like, all right, we've kind of proven that a lot of people are able to work from home remotely successfully. And so maybe that the amount of space we need is less, or maybe it's the same, but the types of activities that are happening in that space are different, right? And so that, for me, kind of in this like post-COVID world where we're kind of, you know, we've gone through all the steps to kind of make our employees safe. We've found out a way for these tools to work and for people to thrive. You know, what does that new office building look like? And I think that's where, you know, time will tell. And, you know,
there's a typology that we just don't even know what it looks like yet, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean,
that's exactly what these type of things do, that they create completely new things.
Right. No, it's super exciting.
Right. Ross, thank you so much. If there's not any other question, we will share some information after, if you're okay with that. If somebody doesn't get it, you can please feel free to send us an email. Please also make sure that if you have any idea of anybody that you would like to see next, just to bring it forward. The whole point of this is for all of us to learn from each other. The Adelaide is all about creating a community, a design community, not just here in Toronto, but globally. Especially now, we've shown how global design is, how connected we all can be. And, you know, you are in Portland, I'm in Toronto, having a glass of wine. So it's just, you know, it's just fascinating to me. So I am very grateful for you to taking your time, hiding in your attic on a 40-degree weather, 100-degree weather, with your kids shouting downstairs. So I'm very grateful for that, and for your amazing presentation that you prepared for us.
I appreciate it. Thank you. That was fun.
It really easy, at least for me, to understand. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope that this has served for all of us, for, you know, a little bit of inspiration for all of us to just get out of our heads, or, you know, look at something interesting and, you know, just learn from each other. So again, guys, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great hour. Ross, thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody, hope you guys stay safe, and yeah, hope you guys are all well.
Thanks, everybody. Take care, Clarissa.
Thank you. Bye. You're getting a lot of thank yous, by the way.
All right.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.